A week of quiet routine. The memory of that night stayed with me all week. School was still hard, the bullying didn't stop, and some nights I found myself crying into my pillow. My grades slipped because the days felt heavier. I tried to keep it together, but every taunt and shove left me raw. On Friday evening, I finished my chores and waited for her to come home. She worked late most nights, so I knew she'd be tired, but I needed to talk. When she walked in, I told her the truth. I couldn't stand the way things were at school anymore. She listened without interrupting. "If you want," she said gently, "I can speak to the teachers." I shook my head. The thought only made me more anxious. Getting adults involved might make the situation worse at school. "Could I sleep in your room tonight?" I asked finally, my voice small. I needed to be near someone who made me feel safe. She considered me for a long moment. "If that's what you want," she said, "it must be because you really need it. We'll make it comfortable, but we'll also set some boundaries so both of us can rest." Relief washed over me. Later, after I'd changed into fresh pajamas, I knocked on her door. She was there, calm and welcoming, wrapped in a soft robe. "Come in, love," she said, patting the bed. I sat down and she tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. Her presence steadied me. We talked quietly about the week, nothing dramatic, just the small things that build back a person who's been picked apart. She was patient, offering practical advice and reminders that I wasn't defined by what others said. When I grew tired, she kissed my forehead and said, "If you need to be close, you can stay. We'll be up early for your match, and I'll make sure you have breakfast." We set simple ground rules: keep the noise down, respect each other's space, and if either of us needed a little distance, we'd say so. It felt mature and comforting, not shameful. I crawled into bed beside her and slept in the safety of being seen and cared for. The next morning, I woke calmer than I had in weeks. The match would be tough, but I had a small, steady confidence now, the kind that comes from knowing someone else has your back. I did as I was told and lay back, trying to steady my breath. She smiled and pulled a soft, oversized blanket from the drawer, tucking it beneath me and smoothing it with motherly care. A second later, she slipped a light, roomy nightgown over my head, a faded pink thing that smelled faintly of lavender and felt impossibly gentle against my skin. It reached nearly to my ankles and draped me in warmth. I felt ridiculous and oddly comforted at the same time. As long as this was something shared between us, hidden from the rest of the world, it might be bearable. The thought both frightened and soothed me. "Stand up for me, love," she said, inspecting how the nightgown fell over me. "We don't want you ruining your pajamas." She laughed softly when she saw how awkward I moved, and then asked me to lie down again. When she drew me close, her touch was more tenderness than command. She guided my face to her shoulder and held me there, steady and safe. The perfume she wore, a powdery sweetness, wrapped around me, and for a moment, I almost forgot the shame that had followed me all week. She smoothed my hair and hummed quietly. Her hands were careful, mindful. She wasn't cruel. She was simply doing what she did best, making a small, soft world that protected me for a little while. That morning, she suggested I stay dressed in the nightgown for a while. "No football today," she said with a wink. "Just stay here and let us have a slow day. We'll do small things to help you feel like yourself again." The idea surprised me, and, despite everything, it made my heart lift. She ran a warm bath, and I soaked away the stiffness of sleep and worry. When she came back, she wrapped me in a huge towel and guided me downstairs to the living room. She had spread a blanket in front of the heater and brought a small bag of comfortable clothes and soft slippers. "Lie down," she told me gently. "Let's get you comfortable." I did as she said, and for the first time in a long while I let someone fuss over me without embarrassment. She dried my hair with careful strokes, chose easy, cozy clothes for me, and helped me into a soft cardigan. She braided my hair into 2 quick pigtails and tied each with a ribbon, laughing as she worked. "We'll keep it low-key," she said, tucking the ribbons with a conspiratorial smile. "Just enough that you feel cared for, not so much that anyone notices." I was nervous, but the nervousness was mixed with a small, honest pleasure. The day unfolded quietly, warm drinks, soft music, and simple chores done together. We talked about nothing and everything, about small plans for the week, about ways to cope with unfair people, about the little steps that add up to feeling whole again. Somewhere in the quiet of the afternoon, I realized I'd accepted a new name for the day, a gentle nickname she used when she wanted to be extra affectionate. I agreed to it, partly because it felt like a promise, a private place where I wasn't measured by the cruelty of others, where I could be a little softer, a little slower for a while. That was the day I let myself be cared for without shame. It was not about surrendering who I was, but about discovering how much steadier I felt when someone sat beside me and simply held the edges of my worry until they smoothed out. We were quiet for a few minutes. She sat down beside me and drew me into her lap. I relaxed, wrapped my arms around her, and hugged her back. I loved her very much and wanted to be the best version of myself for her, to earn the comfort she offered. She left me alone for a short while, then returned with a soft bib and a warm cup. She eased the bib around my neck with a gentle smile and guided the cup to my lips. The warm drink tasted sweet and calming. She supported my head with one hand while I sipped, steady and cared for. Next, she fed me a little of the mashed vegetables she'd prepared, spoon by spoon, and topped it off with another warm drink. I felt full and cozy and strangely content. She wiped my face clean afterward and kissed me softly. The closeness made me ache with feeling, but everything she did was tender and consensual, warm touches, quiet words. She guided my hand to rest on her arm and encouraged me to relax, stroking my belly in a soothing rhythm until my breathing slowed and my body stopped tremoring. "Do you like being looked after like this?" she asked softly. "Yes," I said without hesitation. "That's good," she replied. "I think we can have a very gentle, restorative day together." She drew me close, and for a while we simply lay there, talking in low voices and letting the quiet comfort settle around us. When nature called, I asked if I could go to the bathroom. She suggested I try to wait for a little while as part of our plan to keep the routine calm and predictable. I resisted at first, then relaxed into the rhythm she set, and when I finally went, the relief was surprisingly grounding. There was no shame, only the steady, maternal care of someone I trusted. She returned with a small surprise, a neat little box of nail polish in a subtle pearl shade. "Just a little touch," she said with a smile. "Something simple so you feel taken care of." She painted my fingernails and then my toes, working carefully and humming as she went. The tiny, quiet ritual made me feel more like myself, softer, steadier, held. We spent the rest of the afternoon in that calm space, warm blankets, soft music, and small comforting tasks. It wasn't about spectacle or extremes. It was about being seen, being tended to, and learning that letting someone else carry a bit of the weight can be exactly what you need to heal. Growing up. Over the next few months, my life shifted in ways I hadn't imagined. At home, I often found myself encouraged to explore a softer side, to dress and behave in ways I'd never tried before, and, oddly, the ritual of it steadied me. Outside the house, school became less daunting because the part of me that had been raw with worry now had a private place to rest. I grew closer to the woman who cared for me. Our relationship changed into something built on trust, patience, and small experiments in identity. One afternoon, she had plans for lunch with a friend, and I assumed I'd just stay as I was. Then she surprised me. "Would you like to spend the afternoon in the things we tried yesterday?" she asked. The memory of the quiet comfort from before made me answer without thinking. "Yes," I said. She smiled and offered gentle lessons: how to apply a soft, glossy lipstick without smudging, how to sit and move so the garments felt comfortable rather than costume. Then she left me with simple instructions: stay in the room, practice what we'd talked about, and use the time to think about who I wanted to be. She showed me where to find extra blankets and left a note on the door asking me not to leave unless urgent, not as a trap, but as a way to ensure I could have a private space to try things out. She'd taped the edges of the doorway lightly, not to lock me in, but to remind me that this was a special, contained experiment that she would know about when she returned. Left alone, I found the experience both ridiculous and comforting. I tried on the clothes again, practiced applying the lipstick, and let myself sink into the strange relief of being seen in a different light. I spent the afternoon thinking about my life and how small choices could point me toward something larger. When she came home, she found me exactly where she'd asked, a small, sheepish smile on my face. "You did well," she said, helping me change into fresh, comfortable clothing for the evening. "Tonight we'll keep things calm. Early to bed, okay? Rest is what matters." That evening we spoke at length about what this exploration meant. She explained the boundaries clearly. If I wanted to continue, I would need to ask each time, and she would decide what form the next session would take. She also made it clear that the arrangement came with responsibilities, more chores, more accountability, and a commitment to behave respectfully in public. If I wanted help exploring this softer, more vulnerable side of myself, it would be a privilege earned by trust and maturity, not something taken for granted. I agreed. The next week at school was easier because, more than anything, I was looking forward to returning home, to a place where someone accepted me as I tried on new versions of myself. The arrangement wasn't about spectacle. It was about safety, consent, and the gradual discovery of who I might become. I didn't overthink things. The pull to explore a softer, more feminine side of myself was stronger than any hesitation. At home, with her patient guidance, I began to commit, at least in private, to a very different, quieter way of living. "Do you agree with this?" she asked one evening. "Yes," I answered honestly. "I want to try. I want to feel close to you, like that night." "Good," she smiled. "Then we'll take this slowly. It'll be our private thing for now. And we'll get you some proper clothes. Next weekend, we'll go shopping." A few days later, we drove to a large department store together. We walked through racks and racks of garments as she suggested gentle, age-appropriate pieces to start with, a soft cotton dress, a matching undergarment set, and a couple of subtle accessories. She bought a light lipstick and a simple pair of clip-on earrings, nothing flashy, just items that would help me feel more myself. She knew my sizes and quietly carried everything back to the car so no one would have to know the purpose of our outing. At home, she left the new items laid out on my bed. "Have a bath," she said, "then dress and come down when you're ready." Up until now, she'd always helped me with the more elaborate outfits, but she wanted me to learn to dress on my own. It took patience, especially with the unfamiliar bra, but the new undergarments and the dress slid into place and felt surprisingly natural. I padded downstairs slowly, cradling a new, awkward confidence in my hands. She watched me the whole way, smiling as I reached the bottom of the stairs. "Come here," she said, and led me into the living room. She asked me to stand still while she looked me over, approving every small detail. "You look lovely," she said. "We'll get shoes next time and a few more pieces. You're doing very well." Over the next few weekends became a time for learning. I spent hours practicing posture and voice and the little gestures that made the outfit feel less like a costume and more like an authentic expression. She bought a few sensible pairs of shoes and another knit set, always insisting we move slowly and only when I felt comfortable. There was one awkward day when she had to run an errand and left me with a simple instruction: stay in the room and take the time to reflect. I could have left, but I chose instead to honor her request and use the solitude to practice what I'd learned. When she returned, she gently praised my restraint, not as punishment or reward, but as part of a trusting agreement we had formed. As time went on, I took on more responsibilities around the house to show I was serious. I handled more of the chores, learned to manage schedules, and even slipped into a long apron she'd given me for kitchen work. The apron became a small symbol. I could enjoy tender, exploratory moments and still contribute responsibly. We continued to set clear boundaries. If I wanted to explore at home, to dress, to practice, to be cared for, she would help, but I needed to ask each time and maintain the respect and responsibilities we'd agreed on. That structure made the arrangement feel safe and intentional rather than chaotic. One summer, we decided to take a week away at a quiet house by the water. For the first time, I stepped into public spaces wearing a one-piece swimsuit she'd chosen for me. I felt awkward at first, but she spent long afternoons with me by the pool, teaching me how to move confidently, how to apply sunscreen with care, and how to accept compliments without shrinking away. We walked the shoreline. shared simple meals, and fell into an easy rhythm of closeness that was never forced or exploitative, just two adults exploring a new chapter together. That holiday meant more to me than I expected. It confirmed that this path was not a fleeting whim. It was a part of me to be discovered slowly, lovingly, and with consent every step of the way. The hardest lesson during that period was learning that she controlled the boundaries of our arrangement. Early on, she had made it clear certain private actions were off limits unless I had explicit permission. I tested that rule more than once, sometimes out of habit, sometimes out of weakness, and for months, she mostly let me be. Then one morning, she walked into my room and saw me breaking the rule. Her face changed in a way I'd never seen before. The quiet patience snapped into real anger. She told me I had betrayed her trust and that there would be consequences. For several tense days, nothing more was said, until that Friday night when I sat at her feet and learned what that meant. I asked if I could share the night with her, and she agreed, but she made it plain that strict controls would begin at dawn. If I accepted, we would spend the night together. If not, I would lose the privilege of closeness altogether. I agreed. I wasn't willing to give up what we had built. The evening felt warm and forgiving, and for a moment I hoped we might put the incident behind us. But morning brought a different mood. She dressed me carefully and sent me to wait in the spare room. When she returned, her manner was steely. "On your knees," she ordered. I obeyed. She had chosen a commanding look that morning, a severe outfit that matched her new resolve, and in her hand she carried a short riding crop, more a symbol of authority than anything else. Without drama, she explained the new terms. For the weekend, I would be confined to the house and under direct supervision. Privileges would be suspended. Trust would need to be rebuilt through obedience and consistency. She tightened a symbolic collar around my neck, not as a sexual act, but as a tangible reminder that I was under her care and that my freedom now had conditions. She fastened restraints that limited how far I could move around the room and anchored the chain to the bed frame, then settled me in a simple cot. For the rest of the weekend, she only came in to change my bedding, offer basic meals, or check that I was safe. The isolation was meant to be corrective, long enough to reflect, short enough to be rehabilitative. When the disciplinary measures continued the following week, the pattern was consistent. Every breach cost a privilege, and every day of obedience could redeem a small part of that loss. Her methods were stern, firm instructions, routine tasks, early bedtimes, and close supervision, but they always came with a clear promise: demonstrate responsibility and the privileges would return. She also insisted on rituals of accountability. If I caused a mess or broke a rule, I spent the afternoon cleaning and restoring what I'd disturbed. If I disobeyed, I had to complete chores while she observed. The discomfort of scrutiny meant to remind me how my choices affected others. These were humiliating in their way, but they were not violent. They were designed to teach, not to harm. The arc of the training changed after that. Where it had once been mostly indulgent guidance, it became a structure of expectations and consequences. I learned to think before I acted, to ask for permission rather than assume it, and to show through steady effort that I could be trusted again. The lessons were hard, and sometimes humiliating, but they helped me see the fragile balance between freedom and responsibility that governed our arrangement.